Hi everybody, welcome to Cumberland County Historical Society's 10-Minute Histories. I'm Rachel Knapp, the curator at CCHS, and today we're doing V for vision and planning of our exhibits here. Now each year, the Cumberland County Historical Society does a rotating exhibit that goes through to the end of the year. So currently we have A Woman's Place, the changing roles of women in Cumberland County is on display through the end of the year. And really how we come up with our different ideas and how we go about creating our exhibits really varies. So for instance, it might be because of a sponsorship that comes in, or maybe it's because of an anniversary or a special event. So for instance, I have this display behind me that is from our 2021 annual gala presented by Bobby Rahal Automotive Group. During this gala, we actually had local and regional designers create one-of-a-kind garments based on historical textiles in our collection. So you can actually see some of those on display here through the end of the year at CCHS. Now, when we're creating our rotating exhibits, a lot of times we take into account these different storylines that we've come up with. So for instance, next year we're doing a sports exhibit. So one of the things that we have to look at is trying to figure out maybe how these storylines have evolved over time, specifically within Cumberland County focus. And so what we're doing in creating this storyline and trying to figure out how these narratives have changed over time, as we're doing a lot of research. So we're looking up our primary and secondary sources and doing a lot of reading. So this entails, combing through different newspapers. We're also looking at a lot of drop files that we have of sources that we've collected over the years. We're going through photographs, all these different things to create kind of this text and dialogue for our exhibit. And once we get a really good understanding, we start to kind of go through our own collection, our own artifacts, and see what we have that will kind of fit our desired storyline. And so we're trying to figure out where the holes and the gaps are, that maybe we have to go out and get some things on loan, or maybe we can tap into our educational collection and borrow a few items. And so really what it becomes is us meshing what we have learned in our research and what we have at our fingertips, and trying to make an exhibit that is not only interesting and informational, but also visually interesting, that helps convey a lot of those ideas on a more tactile level for our guests, particularly if we have young guests. So for instance, if you're talking about football in the 1920s, you have a more rugby style football. So for people to see it, and maybe even to have one on display that people can touch, one that's a reproduction, it really helps people wrap their head around some of those things that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have understood if they were thinking of a modern football. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of bridge the gap, like I said, between the information that you're trying to give on your exhibit labels and the items that you are picking to put on display. That being said, you also have to distill down all of your information into label copies. So what ends up happening is we spend a lot of time trying to craft text that is easily digestible, but is packed with information. And so we're trying to figure out ways to connect with our audience and with the different ages of our audience, but make it so that it's impactful and that you want to continue reading and learning and continue on through the exhibit. So like I said, there's a lot of things and a lot of moving pieces that we're taking into consideration. Some of those things that people may not realize when we're talking and about creating exhibits is that we worry about things like the colors. So particularly if we're painting the walls, how does the color impact and help our topic? We're talking about directionality. So we're kind of thinking about the flow as we're going through. Is it, are we learning chronologically, or maybe it's by topic? And also, how are people making their way through the exhibit? Are there nonverbal cues to make their way through the exhibits? So if you see behind us, as you're coming through museums, you're usually coming through in this direction. And so you'll notice behind me a lot of the mannequins on this side, their heads are facing this way, and on this side they're facing this way. And this is so as people come through, they realize that they're supposed to be making their way this way. It's a nonverbal cue to say, oh, they're pointing this direction. And honestly, it's hard to believe, but people actually do pick up on those cues subconsciously and make their way through the gallery in that fashion. So there's a lot of little things that we tend to think about that don't necessarily strike the visitor in an impactful way when they first come through, but it's something that helps really kind of hone in their experience as they come through and really make it more enjoyable. So, like I said, we're doing all this back end. We're picking our artifacts and our primary sources. So if we have any newspaper clippings, ledgers, also our photographs. So we're picking all of these. We're creating our labels. And what ends up happening here is at the end of the year, you know, we will take out our current exhibit and really rework our layout. So we're working on that flow. Different cases that we might need. So maybe we need a new vitrine or a new acrylic top on our case to fit an artifact or something like that. So we're really going through the process of making sure that all of our cases are fit to hold the items that we have. And then if not, how can we accommodate that? How can we make that happen before we open? We're also going through at this time, and like I said, we're getting the paint done. We are creating all of our advertising, putting banners up, and we're getting it out to the public. So once this is happening, you know, once the room is prepped, we can start filling them in with our artifacts, and we'll start organizing our label copy. And what's kind of interesting is within the museum world and just creating, you know, your displays and your exhibits, a lot of times what you put on paper and what you think is going to fit or what's going to look good, maybe in person doesn't. So you're taking in a lot of these cues and looking at it within a broad picture. So something that you believe maybe, okay, yep, we're gonna picture frame this out and it's gonna look wonderful. You know, you get to it and you realize, oh, maybe it's a little tight, maybe it's a little stuffy, and you rework it within that space. So there's a lot of kind of pondering, which sounds crazy. It's a little bit of pondering the space, pondering the layouts and how it will flow and look visually to the eye of our guest. So once we finally get all that together, we will implement different things like interactives, if we're putting videos in there, sound, those sorts of things, really to culminate to the end when we have our exhibit opening. So I hope I didn't lose anybody there. I hope that all made sense. Like I said, we have our women's exhibit up through the end of the year, and then we will be installing our sports exhibit, which will open April 1st of 2022. So I hope that you'll come and see our current exhibit, also our little display from the gala, but also make sure you come back and visit us in 22. We would love to share our stories with you, and we hope that you guys appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a good day.